Okay, welcome to the marking video for the Spring 1 Week 3 exam, which is on bacterial, fungal, viral and protist disease. So the first question tells us that some diseases are communicable, and we're asked what does this actually mean. So this is a key definition that you need to know. A communicable disease is one that is spread from one person to another, that can be passed from person to person. So make sure that you've got that box ticked. Okay, then moving on to B. So we are given some symptoms of a particular disease. So again, there are 7 different pathogens that you need to know the symptoms for and what diseases they are. So we've got pain when urinating and a thick yellow discharge from the vagina, and those are symptoms of gonorrhea. So on the next page, the box you should have ticked was the top one there for gonorrhea. Okay, we're then told tuberculosis is a bacterial infection that affects the lungs. Now, I've underlined bacterial because that's going to tell us some key information about it. Remember, what are the kind of things that all bacteria have in common? They're going to produce toxins. Thinking about how do we treat them? We treat them with antibiotics, and that leads us to the answer to the first part of the question here. So what type of medicine should be used? And this is key, to kill the tuberculosis bacteria. So if we want to destroy the bacteria, the only medicine we can use is antibiotics. Now the next question might seem like it's asking a very similar thing, but again there's a key word. So the type of medicine that's used to treat the symptoms, word here, we want
to make the person feel better but not necessarily kill the bacteria. So if we want to just treat symptoms or relieve the symptoms, we are going to use a painkiller. Now if you were specific and said specific painkillers, so paracetamol or aspirin or ibuprofen, that would be okay as well and you would get the mark, but painkiller is the best option. Okay, then I believe the last part of this question, you're asked to describe the ways in which the human body defends itself against the tuberculosis bacterium. Now, because it just says defends and it's not specific about whether that's defending itself from bacteria getting in or what happens to bacteria when they get inside, you can on this question actually talk about either the non-specific defenses or what our immune system actually does, or even a mixture. So let me show you. You've got to have 4 of these possible bullet points. So the first 5 here are the non-specific defenses. So our skin can just stop bacteria entering. It acts as a barrier. We've got blood that clots, and that's going to stop bacteria entering if we do get a cut. Then our stomach acid can kill any bacteria that has been swallowed. Now if you said tuberculosis instead of bacteria, that would be fine. Then we've got in our nose or trachea, they both produce mucus that can trap bacteria. They also have cilia that can move the mucus out of the nose or out of the trachea. Then you could have mentioned our immune system. So our white blood cells can produce antitoxins, and that is relevant here because bacteria like TB make us ill by producing toxins. So our white blood cells will produce antitoxins. They'll also produce antibodies. And then finally, our white blood cells can carry out phagocytosis, or if you describe what phagocytosis means, so engulfing pathogens and ingesting them, that would be fine as well. So any 4 of those 8 will get you your marks. Okay, on to the second question. So we got food poisoning can be caused by eating food that's contaminated with salmonella bacteria. The first question, one difference between a bacterial cell and an animal cell. So lots of different ones we can give. So a bacterial cell has a cell wall. You of course could have said an animal cell doesn't have a cell wall. A bacterial cell contains plasmids, right, little rings of DNA. A bacterial cell does not have a nucleus, because because bacterial cells are prokaryotic cells and they don't have a nucleus. Or your final option, a bacterial cell is much smaller. You of course could have said the opposite for animal cells in all these cases. So animal cells don't have plasmids, animal cells do have a nucleus, or animal cells are larger, and that's because they are eukaryotic cells. So just make that note just as a reminder that bacterial cells are prokaryotic, animal cells are eukaryotic. And the key difference between them: eukaryotic cells have their genetic information in a nucleus, prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. Okay, then we're given a table that shows us the number of confirmed cases of salmonella food poisoning in the UK. So we can see 2006 we start off with 23.82 confirmed cases per 100,000 of the population. So that means for every 100,000 people, 23.82 have had salmonella food poisoning. Now we can see over the years that the numbers do seem to be going down. There's some places where actually it's just at the end in 2014, 2015 where we see a bit of an increase. Otherwise the cases have gone down. So underneath the table we've got this bit of information. It's estimated that in the UK, for every confirmed case of salmonella poisoning, there are another 3 unconfirmed cases. So what that bit of information tells us is, if we actually just have 1 confirmed case, then there are another 3 that haven't been confirmed. So overall, every 1 confirmed case means that there are the 1 confirmed case plus another 3, so a total of 4 people who actually have salmonella food poisoning. Now that's the key thinking for this question, because we're then asked to estimate the total probability of suffering from salmonella food poisoning in 2015, so just for this year. So the table tells us that in 2015, 14.50 people had confirmed cases for every 100,000 of the population. But going back to that information, if there are 14.50 who actually were confirmed per 100,000, there are 3 others for everyone who haven't been confirmed. So what we have to do, first of all, is actually take that 14.50 and multiply by 4, because the actual number of cases is going to be 4 times bigger than the number of confirmed cases. And that gives us then, so 58 total number of people who've suffered from salmonella in 2015. And then, because it says total probability, we have 2 options. We can work it out as a decimal, or we can work it out as a percentage. So we take the 58 and we can divide it by 100,000, divide it by the per 100,000 of the population, and then that gives us a probability of 0.00058. And if you got that, you get full marks for the question. You could also have written it as a percentage, so we take our 0.00058 and multiply by 100 to give us a percentage of 0.058%. So either answer is correct and will get you the 3 marks. You will get 1 mark if you multiplied by 4 and realize that you needed to do that to get 58, and then the second and the third mark come from the second mark for this calculation, third mark for getting the final answer, or if you multiplied by 100 and got that as your final answer, that would get you the 3rd mark as well. Okay, over the page. So, more questions about this table. So it says, describe the trend in the number of confirmed cases of salmonella food poisoning between 2006 and 2014. Now, trend means to look for the pattern, and that means to talk about what's happening to the number of cases between those 2 years, between 2006 and 2014. And we saw, when we looked at the table, that the number of cases was decreasing. It was only in 2015 where it went back up again, so between these 2 years we saw a steady decrease. So it then asks us to suggest 2 reasons for that trend. So So 2 reasons why there's a decrease between 2006 and 2014. Now, to answer this, you needed to think about what can we do to prevent the spread of Salmonella. And there are 2 possible options. One, talk about this one first, is there must have been more vaccination of poultry. If we vaccinate the poultry against Salmonella, then it cannot be passed on. Now, the other way that Salmonella is spread is by preparing food unhygienically. So if you've got some idea about there being better hygiene standards or improved hygiene, that's the second possible reason why there would be fewer cases of Salmonella food poisoning. Okay, 2E, we've got a graph, and it's showing us number of cases of food poisoning during one particular year over different months. So we can see we get a big spike in August and September, and that's what this question is about. So suggest one reason for the high number of cases of Salmonella food poisoning in the summer. So key bit here, the summer, there are warmer conditions in the summer, and that's going to link to the first thing I've written here, which is warmer weather, so the number of bacteria increases faster. So in warmer weather, bacteria can reproduce and multiply faster, and if there are more bacteria, a higher chance of there being food poisoning. There are other options. So you could have talked about people are going to eat more cold food in the summer months, and if it's cold food, it means it hasn't been warmed up, so we haven't killed the Salmonella bacteria by cooking it, so that could be the reason why there's a higher chance. And last one, that in the summer months when it's warmer, people might be having more barbecues, and there's a risk that they might not be preparing the food hygienically if they're having a barbecue. So one of those will get you the mark for that question. Okay, on to number 3. So, first part, we have to draw a line from each disease to the type of pathogen that causes the disease. So, first, gonorrhea is caused by a bacterium, malaria caused by a protist, and it's caused by the Plasmodium protist. And then finally the measles is caused by, it's a viral pathogen. Okay. So some parts of the human body have adaptations to reduce the entry. This is key. Reduce the entry of live pathogens, so to stop pathogens actually getting inside. So then it tells us to look at figure 1. And we've got a diagram pointing us to the trachea. We have to explain how the trachea is adapted to reduce the entry of live pathogens. So how does it stop pathogens getting inside? So 3 points here for the 3 marks. The trachea produces mucus, and that traps pathogens. So 1 mark for that whole bit about mucus trapping pathogens. Second mark for knowing this term, that the trachea has cilia, so it has these tiny little hairs along the lining. And then third mark, the cilia can move the mucus out of the trachea. If you talked about it moving it up to the mouth or it being swallowed into the stomach, that is fine, but the key idea is that the cilia move the mucus away from the trachea. So you needed those 3 points to get the 3 marks.